Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. It is Friday, October 13th. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. I am joined, as I always am on a Friday, by Yates and Stephania Bell. How you guys doing so far today?
Good. I think we have a shades of gray color scheme going here.
Bit,
Let's
yeah.
go. Question
like
for you
this.
guys. Do you believe in the mythical powers of Friday the 13th?
Oh, wow.
I
Depends. Ask
think
me
in
at
the,
end
in the
of
month of
day.
October. Oh, okay. Gotcha. You know what? I got to tell you guys something. So I used to subscribe to all those things like, Friday the 13th, bad luck, good luck, rabbit's foot, all that stuff.
Loch Ness Monster.
When we moved into our house that we currently live in, it was about 3 years ago, one of our neighbors has a black cat. And this black cat comes onto our front porch day and night, like 3 to 5 times a day. I can't tell you how many times I've walked past this black cat. I have no idea whether it's resulted in good or bad luck, but I've just given up on luck charms now since.
Yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
I am unbothered by you, Friday the 13th.
I used to always step over top of the lines because you never wanted to step
Don't
on
step
the
on a
line.
crack,
Right?
'cause,
Those kind of things.
Right, yes. And I will say this, my biggest takeaway from this black cat is it is very hairy, and I'm constantly using a lint roller
Oh, yeah.
on
What
our
happened to
outdoor
your
furniture.
guard dog?
Cisco.
Cisco would not hurt. I mean, the whole expression would not touch a fly or hurt a fly was created for Cisco.
Exactly.
Because of that. That's so cute.
There you go. Well, I think your luck's pretty good, Field. I'm
Oh,
just
well,
gonna
thank
go
you,
out on a limb
Starfania.
and say,
Okay,
got an
you're very
adorable
kind.
family.
Yeah, well.
You're a star. What
That's
more?
true. Look at
Dress,
this.
snappy dresser.
Wow.
Did someone pay you something before this show? Do I owe you something? Did I do something wrong?
No, but I've told if you put good out in the universe, then
universe-
there's no bad
Oh,
luck.
it's
That's right.
reciprocal, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
Not recidivism, reciprocation.
that's right.
Yeah.
We are a learning.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Dummy Mike Clay did not know the word recidivism yesterday while sitting in your seat. So
Yeah.
that was a thing.
No osmosis.
I feel super lucky being able to do the show with you guys every Friday like we always do. We're going to dive into a big injury report. Stephania will make sure we have all the information needed to make sure our fantasy lineups are set right with some of the injured guys that we have. Plus, we've got a Thursday Night Football recap. We're going to keep that as quick as possible. It was not a super fun game. And then we're going to dive into the rest of our Week 6 preview, Part 2. But first, Stephania, we're going to start with you as we always do. Diving into the Week 6 injury report, we got Saquon Barkley leading this thing off. We have not seen him since Week 2. I asked you in Week 4, will we have him back this week? I asked you last week, will we have him this week? Is Week 6 the week that we might see Saquon Barkley?
I know. I'm not sure I want to give an answer anymore because, look, this is by the minute update on Saquon Barkley.
Okay.
And I think what you have to look at is the big change across the several weeks that he's had the injury. Each week he's done more. It started with him getting back to practice with individual drills, starting to do a little more with teamwork. Now he's doing yet a little bit more. And I thought he sounded a little dejected last week, maybe frustrated by how long this is taking despite his effort, because he had some very good early progress. But guess what, folks? That's the nature of the way things heal. Sometimes you feel like you're moving at a fast clip, and then other times it'll feel like a little tiny plateau. But I will say this. Yesterday, he talked about the responsibility of being a captain, and he was trying to get back, doing everything that was asked of him by listening to the athletic training staff, doing everything he could to get back. It sounded like a guy who was trying to convince everyone that despite the nature of a high ankle sprain, he's doing what he can to get there. The game is not until Sunday night. That is the challenge for fantasy managers.
Yep.
I think we're going to have a pretty good idea by the end of Friday's practice. Obviously, we record this at 11 a.m., so we don't have that information yet. Remember, I've talked about the average running back absence following a high ankle sprain being at 3.8 games. If he misses this week, this would be 4 games, so he'd be a little bit over. But remember when he had this injury before, he came back at 3 after missing 3 and felt like he struggled. So I think we're in the vicinity, but everybody wants to be really careful that he just doesn't go out there and have a setback.
The Giants' schedule is something else right now, huh?
Oh, man.
He misses games against the 49ers, the Dolphins, potentially the Bills. I forgot who they played the week prior to that, but they lost that game too.
And it's tough because Andrew Thomas is down there tackle with a
tackle.
hamstring.
Yeah,
and so,
totally.
For Saquon, that could make his return that much harder.
If you're wondering how I feel about Matt Breida, I feel the same way I have for the past
last 2
couple of
weeks.
weeks.
Yes.
If you have to play him, God bless you.
Yep. Hopefully you don't. All right, let's move ahead and talk about Austin Eckler. Stephania, it sounds like we're going to have Austin Eckler back in our fantasy lineups. Understanding that is going to be the case, it feels like. What are you going to watch on Sunday when you're looking at Austin Eckler out on the field? Sorry, you're right.
Monday night football.
Yep.
So this is one that you can feel good about, even though it's a late game. Now, he gave himself a 99% chance of coming back. So there's still that little 1% 1%.
We were trying to decide yesterday what that 1% could be
The 1%
accounted for
means
by.
that I think that he gets the full sign off. The team's like, okay, fine, you're off the injury report, you're ready to go. And also that nothing happens between speaking it into existence and the game kicking off on Monday night to change that plan. But look, he was injured week 1, had an Austin Eckler-like beautiful performance, suffers a high ankle sprain. And then we saw his frustration. And Eckler is somebody who talks to the people who play fantasy, and we appreciate that. But he talked about how difficult it was. Even when he got back into practice, he said at the time he could run full speed. This was last week, but he still was having some discomfort with sharp cuts. He was still building back. So this week, back in full practice, including sort of this bonus practice they get on Tuesday. So we have the benefit of him being out there a couple of times and moving well. And Chris Rim, who reports on the Chargers for us now, said he was out there making juke moves. So if you know about high ankle sprains, it's that pivoting, it's rotational movement that is the hardest thing to do. Knowing that he's making these little dodges and darts, the things he couldn't do before, that's very encouraging. And you ask what I'm going to be watching for, does he look like himself? Is he playing the same way? There is typically a drop-off in performance metrics for the first week or two when running backs come back from high ankle sprains. But there are outliers. And Austin Eckler could very well be one of those outliers. And again, going back to that 3.8, he'll have missed 3 plus the bye week.
Yeah.
So that's 4 weeks. This will be week 5. He feels good. Maybe the performance metrics don't drop off because he's had that time to get himself a lot better.
Would love to see that, and would love to have him back in our fantasy lineups, obviously. So let's talk about T. Higgins, Stephania. He's been dealing with a rib injury. What kind of progress has he been making?
FYI, 24 ribs in the human body, 26 in cows.
We established that.
We figured that out yesterday.
Not 112 like we thought the other day. Yeah. Okay.
We've since refined our knowledge on ribs, but 24, is the final answer.
It was his first time for a rib injury, so I'm sure T. Higgins been researching it as well.
Yeah.
And we talked in the last show I was on about how he was having trouble sleeping on his right side and coughing, and you just are reminded at how painful these injuries are, and they limit every single thing that you do. He thought he might be able to go last week. Ultimately, he could not. And he said it was basically a pain tolerance issue. I thought it was interesting this week talking to reporters. He said, it's probably something I'll have to manage continually throughout the season. I don't know that it'll really last that long. He said he's never had a rib injury, so he's not really sure how long it's going to last. But he also said, no big deal. Fall down, bounce back up. I'll be ready to go. He's preparing himself for the contact with others, contact with the ground. I like his chances of playing limited 2 days this week. I think he'll probably be out there.
Back inside the top 20 for wide receivers, we are hoping that Joe Burrow's potential liftoff coincides with T. Higgins' potential liftoff as well. He had a lot of volume prior to getting hurt. It's just he was a super inefficient player. First 3 games, 2 duds, 1 really good game. I believe it was 8 targets in 3 straight games. So it wasn't the volume that was the concern. If you tell me T. Higgins is going to get 8 targets in a game, I'd tell you start him without any hesitation. I think this Bengals offense is ready for liftoff. I really do.
Yeah, we will talk about them a little bit later in the show because they definitely looked good last week.
Quarterback certainly looked like he'd made some significant progress.
Yes,
I love your socks, Daniel.
Hey, you know what, Field? I was worried that we might not have Amon-Ra St. Brown for this game, and so I decided I was going to speak it into existence. I wore my Amon-Ra St. Brown socks today.
Yeah.
Stephania, is there a chance after not having him last week that because I wore these socks,
so you are
specifically
superstitious
because of me, that fantasy managers will have him in their lineups here in week 6?
I think you deserve all the credit.
Go tweet at Daniel Dopp. Say thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for
exactly.
that.
I think Amon-Ra said that he was waiting to see what you wore today
before
he committed to playing. But abdominal strain suffered during the week 4 game and didn't play last week, but he had been running. Remember, we were talking about how great he said he felt while he was running and how fast he was running, things that typically if you have a more severe abdominal injury, you're not going to be able to do. So even though they held him out, and I think this was really the team also saying, hey, the medical staff saying,
not that. I mean,
I don't know that they said that, but they decided the risk versus the reward not there.
Yeah.
They listed him as doubtful. So for a guy who sounded that positive early in the week, that was a bit of a surprise. And that's what made me think, this is the team just saying, okay, we're going to wait another week. And then he came out and said, I'm kind of glad I did. I'm kind of glad I did. Okay. I feel great. He's back in practice. I think I was going to say, too, that Dan Campbell said he felt pretty good about him playing. as early as Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I think that we're looking at a very high likelihood that we see Amon-Ra St. Brown.
What about Darren Waller? Because Darren Waller has been limited at practice. What's he dealing with, Stephania?
Well, it's funny because I wrote this down because it said groin, but he then, here we go.
My finger.
If you know, you know. He said he was dealing with a groin injury, but no. Brian Dable said he was dealing with a groin injury and called him day to day. He was listed on the injury practice report with a groin injury. But Darren Waller said it was part of the rest protocol that has been in place for him. And if you go back and look at the practice reports of the first few weeks, he has had some veteran rest days in there. That came as a result of, number one, he is a veteran who's a little bit older, but he's had these soft tissue injuries, including the hamstring issue that cost him significant time last year. And part of the preseason, remember there was the flare-up, there was the question, like, was it a new hamstring injury? And he said, no, this was more of a nerve thing related to scar tissue in his hamstring, which may sound serious, but it's actually fairly common, and felt like he could manage that well. It was not a big deal. I think this is potentially all part of the same thing.
Okay.
So
That's
even
great
though
news.
they play Sunday night, I feel more confident about Darren Waller's ability to take the field than Saquon's, for example.
Okay.
Ooh, that's
wow.
interesting
All
right
right.
there. Yeah.
That's really good for us. I mean, tight end has been a really tough position. So if you can have a guy like Darren Waller, I would like to be able to have in my fantasy lineup.
He had a good game last week, too. We sort of finally saw the Darren Waller that we talked about during the preseason so much. So obviously, if he's active, we think if we think on Sunday morning he will be active, make your plans to have Darren Waller in your lineup.
Keep your eye on Daniel Jones because he's dealing with a neck injury, and we don't know for sure that
So
he will
the
be there.
Bills are 14-point favorites, Stephania.
Yeah.
Will it be a 14-point spread by the end of the first quarter, perhaps?
I'm just really worried about Daniel Jones being able to stay upright and keep his neck protected if he does in fact play.
This is why you need to watch FF Now on Sunday morning for all of the latest injury information. Stefania's going to have so much there to be able to dive into. All right. We're going to be back with a little bit more on the other side in just a little bit. But Stefania, thank you so much for all this.
Thank you, Stephania.
All right, Phil, let's pay some bills. What do you got for us?
Are you overwhelmed by insurance?
Yes, I am.
I know, me too. Make it easy. Get all your insurance in one place with Geico. Plus, get 24/7 claim support and on-the-go policy access with the award-winning Geico mobile app. See how easy insurance can be and go to geico.com.
Phil, do you smell that?
I mean, Mike just walked into the set, so it could be him.
Oh, I thought it was Mike, but I actually think it's the scent of fresh turf and freshly cracked Dr. Pepper, guys, which can only mean one thing. It is college football season, so block off your Saturdays and swipe a sweet Dr. Pepper from the mini fridge because there's a new season of high kicks, long throws, and Fansville commercial breaks to carry you all the way to the West Coast games. That's right, the fans are back, and this year things are heating up. We're talking more hot takes, more heartbreak, more layers of face paint. Get ready to drink in all that drama this season with the help of the most delicious college football tradition there is, DP Dr. Pepper, the one fans deserve. All right, back here on Fantasy Focus with Field Yates, Mike Clay, and Daniel Dopp. Guys, we are going to dive into a Thursday night recap before we get into a Week 6 preview. Let's make this as quick as possible. This game kind of sucked.
It was not fun, Daniel.
It was not fun.
There was a
to
total
watch.
of 2 touchdowns scored. So you want to like the few, like maybe the 2 good things from the game last night?
I want to do this first.
Okay.
I think there's a lot to talk about.
Can you tell me what the Dallas Cowboys defense and old man Adam Thielen have in common?
Same amount of fantasy points.
They have 2 games with at least 25 fantasy points, something Patrick Mahomes has only done 1 time so far this year. Field, Mike, what's going on with Patrick Mahomes right now?
I mean, we talked yesterday, you guys said, well, how could you have him not ranked number 1 in your quarterbacks for this week? And I said he hasn't been that good this season. We have to make something very clear before a headline gets clipped off and people watch the video and they get very, very
Field
mad.
hates Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes is unquestionably the best player on the planet. In real life, there's no 2 ways about it. The problem with a relatively slow start for Patrick Mahomes, he's not been god awful. He's still been a top 10 quarterback. The problem is that you paid premiums on 3 quarterbacks specifically this year. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts. Those are only worth that premium you paid if they are at the top of the food chain for quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, if he finishes outside the top 10 this week and with just 17.34 fantasy points, he will. That will be his 4th game this season, not finishing in the top 10. He had 4 games all of last season not finishing as a top 10 quarterback. I don't know if it's specifically because they just don't have anybody besides Travis Kelce that you can count on in the passing game, but it's been a slower start for Patrick Mahomes. They played the brutal Denver defense last night and made them look like the Denver defense from last year. They could not finish the job in the red zone specifically, Mike.
Yeah, it felt like 2 years ago, kind of just take what they give you sort of strategy. You know, the Denver just played too high and didn't allow anything deep, and Kansas City thought, all right, so it's a short week. We're just going to run the ball, throw short passes. And it worked. It wasn't a winning strategy for Denver, but it was a good way to limit that offense. But I did look a little closer at this because I was wondering, like, I felt like last year Mahomes got off to a little bit of a slow start. He had like a huge game, and then he kind of dipped a little bit. But it's not the case. Check this out. 19.4 fantasy points per game so far through 6 weeks. Okay. I just look back at the first 6 weeks of his career, 25.2 points per game, never below 23.7. So this is 4 points per game. This is very much the worst start of his career. Wow. And it's interesting. I mean, he's still a guy we're going to view as a good QB1 because he could get rolling at any given point. And also upcoming schedule, Chargers, Broncos again, Miami, then the bye week for them. So they have some decent matchups coming up, a chance to at least get back on track.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I don't think this is about what you do with Patrick Mahomes going forward. You're not going to bench Patrick Mahomes.
No.
It's more about whether your decision to pay the full freight for Patrick Mahomes will end up being worth it. So far, it has not been worth it relative to other quarterbacks, right? You could have gotten Justin Herbert 4 rounds later, 5 rounds later, and he's quarterback 1 on a points per game basis. Travis Kelce ruled, though, last night, looked like himself, coming off of an ankle injury, looked no worse for the wear. 124 receiving yards last night for Kelce, the most by any tight end in a game so far this season, 21.4 fantasy points. He ruled. Isaiah Pacheco was good too, by the way.
Great volume again.
15.8 fantasy points for Pacheco. Clearly has established himself as that go-to back in Kansas City. But most importantly, Mike, he's catching passes left and right now.
6 targets, 6 catches now. That's career high in both categories by 2. But he now has 4+ targets in 3 games this season. Yeah. So this is huge for his fantasy stock, and it is showing up. By the way, his snap shares, you look at his 3 snap shares the past 3 weeks, all career high. His top 3 in his career. So he's playing more snaps, getting more work in the passing game. He's awesome to watch. I mean, how much fun is he to have on your fantasy team? Just watch him run people over. And that involvement in the passing game is massive. So, he's a fringe RB1 now going forward, at least. We had him even higher in this good matchup, but he's terrific.
There is not a single Chiefs wide receiver right now that you were considering starting in fantasy. I know we've talked about Rashee Rice.
He's close.
I understand, but you're not starting him right now.
The snaps back down. The snaps were going up, and then now they're back down. He did have another good game, 10+ fantasy points in 4 of 6 games. So he's at least in that flex conversation every week. But this got to stop with the committee at receiver. Pick your best guys. I mean, MVS just out there running clear out routes. He's
Robert Meacham.
Yep.
Worse than that. No, worse. Like his target share was like 12% last year. It's like 6% this year.
That's crazy.
He's just a waste. It's just a waste of space. It's not his fault. There's nothing wrong with him. It's just
they're not utilizing.
I mean, look, I'm not trying to say he's bad football. Yeah, I'm not trying to say that. He's just. It's just a waste of a play. Like, why is he on the field if you're not going to throw it to him at all?
Yeah, my guess would be they feel like the spacing is important, but it's not like him. Like they're still kind of not. It's not dink and dunk, but like they're not exactly like a big play offense right now through the passing game.
That spacing is important if they take shots to the guy. If you never take shots to the guy, how long until you stop trying to like really give it the same?
He's definitely going for 200 yards next week.
On the other side of this, what did you think about the Broncos, real quickly?
Wretched performance. Yeah, I thought it could I thought it had to go up, but just terrible performance last night. Russell Wilson has a 4th quarter touchdown and a 2-point conversion that doesn't even salvage the day. 6.9 fantasy points for Russ. The only player that actually was worth starting last night for the Denver offense, Cortland Sutton, who now has 4 touchdowns through the air this season. That's as many as he had over the past 3 years combined. Now, he did miss all but 1 game 3 seasons ago, but still, Cortland Sutton has actually proved by far to be the more valuable Broncos wide receiver.
Question for you. How many more games does Jerry Jeudy play for the Broncos?
I mean, the trade deadline is 2 weeks away. Yeah, I mean, this could be full on fire sale. Yeah,
I think so. I think he's gone. I mean, the pregame blow up, the snaps are going down. He played. The snaps were down yesterday. Also, where's Marvin Mims? Come on, 20%.
Once maybe one of those receivers is gone. Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough go right now for that entire Denver Broncos offense. Keep in mind, by the way, the soft part of their schedule defensively has already taken place. It only get harder.
You got it.
All right, back here on Fantasy Focus. Today's show is presented by Geico. So Geico, see all the ways that you can save. We are diving into our Week 6 preview. Guys, let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
Last week, I was down.
Wow, your voice is so much higher this week. So much better. Last week, let's
I
talk
was
about
down
the Bengals.
on
Now it's
Joe
like
Burrow.
Now it's like peak Joe Burrow. We're
And
back.
you want to know why? It's because I saw Joe Burrow look good out there. This has nothing to do with the fantasy points. This is the idea of the eye test. You watched him in the pocket. He looked confident. He was moving well. Go ahead, Mike.
Do we
Go
have a
ahead.
board bet? Do we have a board bet? We haven't talked about this yet.
Nah, we don't have a board bet. No board bets.
Yeah.
Field, I think
You
you're
tried
even-
to slip it through because I wasn't here on Monday.
You are.
Yeah, you went 2-0 in that board bet. We can leave it there.
Okay.
Don't worry about
All
it.
right.
No one
Anyway.
else. Nothing else needs to
I
be
mean,
said
I
about
was
it.
optimistic about Joe Burrow because they were playing Denver last week. Was it Denver? Yeah.
No, it was Arizona. but
Arizona. Yeah, good
same
matchup,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
We're in the spot, though, now where we've seen Joe Burrow field after you and I have both been a little bit lower than Mike. I'll give Mike his flowers for that one. It looks like Joe Burrow
Mike's
has turned
nailed
the
it.
corner.
Mike is the pragmatic one in this group, and it often serves him to a very, very effective strategy. Who was it 2 weeks ago where Mike was like, just hold the fort. It's going to be
Justin
okay.
Fields.
Justin Fields. There you go. So Mike is not full of hot hair. As a matter of fact, he is full of lots of big brains. So, yes, Joe Burrow was a great call by Mike last week, and now
Keep going.
Mike and I, Daniel and I, excuse me, have joined the hype train.
Yes, we have.
Joe Burrow back inside.
Fields
our
actually
top
higher
10.
than
Yeah,
me.
why do you
completely
hate Joe
flip-flop.
Burrow this
Yeah,
week?
what's your
Mike?
problem?
Me and you. Yeah, we're Fields all in. You just need one game. One game you're in.
Couple of things here. As Daniel mentioned, how he was moving around a whole lot better. That calf injury seems to be going the other way. We know the weapons are about as good as it gets in the NFL with T. Higgins expected to play and Jamar Chase. I thought last week was an important thing for Jamar Chase. Next Gen Stats provides I don't know, it's like a flow chart. It's a route chart for wide receivers, and they have it for quarterbacks. They have it for everybody. But you can see where a receiver lined and also what routes he ran throughout the game. And if you look at Jamar Chase, it was like every possible alignment and every possible route was covered last week, right? So it's basically the strategy is who's our best player? Let's do everything we can to get the football in his hands, which had not been the case as frequently as it should have been during the first 4 games of the season. Makes me feel optimistic. And this bank, we know this team's good. We know they're good. They've been in the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl over the past 2 years. It was just, when is it going to click? Once it clicked, you should be ranking these players like you would have coming into the season. Joe Burrow was ranked right around quarterback 6 or 7 coming into the season. So we're back to the market has corrected itself, Mike Clay.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just want to. I hope he does continue to run the ball. He only had 7 yards last week, but he had that one scramble that made you think, okay,
10 yards,
maybe it's
longest
coming
one of the
back.
season.
But again, he only has 10 rushing yards this season. He's gonna have to get up into the 200s by season's end to pay off this ADP. He's gonna have more. He's not gonna have an extreme game like that every week through the air. Last year, the reason he got to that next tier was because he was adding value with this. So we'll see if that continues going forward. But I'm with you guys. Yeah, he can be back in your lineups here in week 6.
And Jamar Chase is never leaving your lineup. He had an awesome week last week.
I
You're
mean,
playing him again here this week.
one team leagues, if he has a tough matchup, you're in a one team league,
yes.
just play against yourself.
Mike in his
Rotisserie.
1-team leagues, I'll tell you what.
I mean, maybe you bench him some weeks, but that's it.
Do you win the championship in those leagues, or are you in the toilet bowl concession?
Yeah, you win everything.
Technically both.
a little bit of everything.
It looks, fantasy football can be a stressful game, and there's no stress in that format.
Yeah.
That's right.
You just dominate every week.
Yeah.
Have a down week, you win.
I had
Big
some-
week, you win.
Some stress last week around Trevor Lawrence because you guys came at me as to whether or not it was a good decision to play him against the Buffalo Bills. It wasn't terrible. Here's
It
what I
was
want to take
terrible.
away from this. No, it was not. Here's what was terrible.
Process first
Hold on.
results.
Here's what was
He
terrible.
was outside the top 15.
Let me finish, Mike Clay.
Wow.
He only had 14 fantasy points, so that's fair. You're
Yeah.
right. He was outside the top 15. But if you told me going into against a Buffalo Bills defense that he was going to throw for over 300 yards, that he was going to have 7 carries for over 30 rushing yards on the ground, he was going to find a way to get in the end zone, you would say that's a pretty good result for what has been a struggling Trevor Lawrence against a nice Bills defense. Those 2 fumbles.
That'd be a
those
great day for
minus
Mac
4
Jones.
points.
That would be awesome for Mac Jones.
What are
to
you
do that,
talking
or-
about?
It would be.
That'd be huge. That'd be a huge
That'd
fantasy
be
day
a
for
great
Mac.
day for the entire Patriots offense. 300 yards.
Yeah. So we start Mac Jones this week, is what you're saying?
No,
You're
we're
saying
not.
that?
I don't think so, but I am starting Trevor Lawrence this
Start
week.
PJ Walker?
Are you
You
not
might get
starting
that.
Trevor Lawrence this week? Are you out on Trevor Lawrence
I
after
am,
a 300-yard game where
I'm
he
gonna
had
start him.
7 carries? 7 carries at the quarterback position, Mike?
I will start him because he actually did have one decent fantasy
I
day
didn't
this
hear you.
season.
Could you say that again a little louder?
And
for
it
me?
was against the Colts, who they're playing this week. Not the Buffalo Bills, who we benched him for last week. And that was a good decision. I would say it was a good decision to bench Trevor
16th in
Lawrence.
quarterback ranks. Yeah, everything.
Yeah,
Quarterbacks scoring for the week.
Yeah.
How can we make this into a board board bet for you two because you guys have them ranked identically.
the same spot.
Quarterback 9 and quarterback 9. Well, want to assign a point value on it?
I mean, I feel like we should, at the way you're like taking a W on this, I feel like you should lose a board bet for last week.
Process
like a
over result,
retroactive
Mike.
loss.
I got a
Process
good
over
one.
result.
Joe Burrow versus Trevor Lawrence board bet for the week. Technically, Daniel does have Joe Burrow one spot ahead of Trevor Lawrence, but Mike's confidence in Burrow is oozing. Daniel's confidence in Trevor Lawrence is also oozing.
That's true.
All right. I'll do it.
I'm willing
Why
to
not?
do
It's
this.
for fun.
Seattle Seahawks, sure. Why not?
Let's do it.
They're not the Buffalo Bills. So what are we going to say here? We're just going to say which one
You
is the
say
better
Joe
quarterback?
Burrow outscores. He says Joe Burrow outscores Trevor Lawrence. You say Trevor Lawrence.
I say Joe Burrow outscores Trevor Lawrence in week 6.
I say Trevor Lawrence outscores Joe Burrow in week 6. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Well done right there, right, you guys. But we do it,
last week, minus 4
Of course,
points.
yeah.
That
No,
was
but
tough.
as Mike said, it was a good matchup for him. The first time these two teams played, it'd be a good matchup again this time around. So I have Trevor Lawrence as quarterback 10 on my board this week.
What about his
part
pass
of the
catches?
reason why I have increased confidence is I felt like last week was a concerted effort to get Calvin Ridley the football. I mentioned this on Monday, but on top of the great day as a receiver, Calvin Ridley had 2 carries in week 5. To my knowledge, those were his first 2 carries of the season, which tells you that like the team knows they need to get this player involved more. And excuse me. So I think Calvin Ridley, that was a hopeful sign of like things to come going forward. He's had 2 good games out of 5, but you're looking at me like you have something to say.
I was going to say one of those 2 big games was
The Colts.
Was against the same Colts in
so
week
we're
1.
back in on Calvin Ridley again this week, right? We're all there?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm at 23. Yeah. Over 100 yards, 8 catches in that week 1 game. Came out strong. We felt, remember after week 1, we were like, all right, this is real. It's going to be a superstar. And then he had 3 straight duds, but back on track. A touchdown 2 weeks ago at the big game this past week with the high volume, as you pointed out. Yeah, I feel better about Ridley now.
It feels weird to say we're all in on Calvin Ridley when we have him like field. I've got him at wide receiver 26. You've got him at wide receiver 27.
Nature of the
Mike-
position, though.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
was
all
going to
it
say, you
is.
talked about this a couple shows ago where it's just like wide receivers 18 through 35. It's almost like you could pick almost anyone.
I think we're
in
going to
there.
talk about like Devonta Smith is like 15 spots below that.
Well, when
unreal.
I was saying all in, meaning like not like we are chips to the middle all in,
No,
more
but
like
like we're-
all of us, all 3 of us are in
We're
on
starting
Calvin
him.
Ridley this week after some divisive comments just moments ago between the 2 of you about both Trevor Lawrence
For the
and
record,
Joe Burrow.
we're having fun with the board bet, but yeah, this week I like Lawrence. I mean, the Colts have really struggled against quarterbacks, and he hasn't scored a rushing touchdown. He hasn't really scored many passing touchdowns, but he is adding more rushing yards this season. He's definitely an uptick from last year, so I feel good about both of those guys as back end QB1s this week.
Yeah, I love him there too as well. All right. Let's talk about some, you know what? Actually, let's dive a little bit more.
Okay.
I'm curious when you have this. We looked at how good last week that this running back was. Travis Etienne was absolutely fantastic. Unreal in this spot.
Yeah, he was great.
Like, is this going to be another smash spot for him against this Colts defense?
You want to start with that one?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's a guy I'm a big fan of. We've talked about this on the show. His efficiency last year as a rusher and pass catcher was great. We just wanted an uptick in passing game usage. We're getting it. We're getting it. He's terrific in both areas.
Yep.
And by the way, Tank Bigsby concern just out the window. I mean,
Oh my
he's the
gosh.
clear backup. Excellent insurance back. Fine guy to stash on your bench. No standalone value. This is ETN show.
So I normally on the show on Friday, we don't like dive deep into players that like obviously we're going to start. The reason why Daniel brought up Travis Etienne is after spending the week contemplating various things that Mike could do to correct his sins from this past week.
Yes.
We have decided that Mike is going to trade me Travis Etienne
Correct.
Okay.
in our Dynasty League.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Who do I get back in this trade?
You get Jordan Mason back.
Jordan Mason. All right. Well, if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, then it could work out.
It's your
for me.
fault then, now that you said that. Yeah, jeez.
How
It
dare
could work
you?
out.
Yeah.
Or
Seriously.
he retires. Okay.
I don't
whatever.
think I actually have Jordan Mason on my team. You can have Colt
You're
McCoy.
gonna
You want
have to
that
get him
one?
You know what? You know what's funny though? Maybe I shouldn't admit this on a fantasy football podcast, but last night I was a little late, busy getting work done, a little late setting my lineups. And in our Dynasty League, I was last minute. I'm going through. I was taking my time. I didn't even realize what time it was. Pulled Russell Wilson out, put in Geno Smith, hit the button or whatever, and it said lineup locked. So Russ was in my lineup last night. That was a tough one. That was a tough one. I'm facing rebuilding DJ. So
Okay.
maybe it'll still work out. But
Victory
who
points
knows?
might not be in your favor this
If
week.
I lose by like 10, that's going to hurt.
On the other side of that game, we're not expecting to see Anthony Richardson. Obviously, Gardner Minshew would be the guy that would take over there.
Yeah.
Feel that we've talked about this briefly, but just in case people haven't listened to any of the earlier shows this week, how would that impact your view of the Colts and these pass catchers?
I feel fine about the pass catchers. I might actually feel even a little bit better than when Anthony Richardson was under center for them. Minshew, 29%. I am like fighting through something this week, guys.
Yeah, you are. You're working on it, though.
Do you feel like you guys have given me enough credit?
Yeah, no.
For what? For fighting through?
Yeah.
I didn't even know you were on the injury report.
Okay.
If I was honest.
I
knew you were day to
you're
day.
doing so great.
I'm
It's like
tough.
you didn't even.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like when a
Thank you.
guy goes the whole season, has a great year, and then after the year they're like, oh yeah, I have to have like major knee surgery.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, you just ran for like 2,000 yards. What do you do? Like, what?
Yeah. So, anyways, earlier in the week I did feel as though the wide receivers have maybe even a little bit of an uptick in value with Gardner Minshew. 29% target share for Michael Pittman Jr. with Minshew under center. 24% for Josh Downs. Good for me to brain fart all of a sudden right there. And I think it's worth just like reiterating in the backfield. Like, we had to give Zach Moss a little bit more credit going into the week this week after the explosion game last week. The Colts have said they're going to increase the workload for Jonathan Taylor. I know it's a matter of when, not if, they eventually make him the lead dog without much competition from Zach Moss. But I have Jonathan Taylor right around RB20 and Zach Moss right around RB30 this week. So in a deeper league, if you're at a pinch, Zach Moss still has some value.
Yep, he's on that flex radar. I actually pulled him from a deeper league for Zach, or I pulled Moss out and put Rashee Rice in last night, which I'm fine with. He got 10, 11 points. I'm still, like we said, it's when, not if, right? We've been over this. They did not pay Taylor all that money to be a backup or committee back. He's going to be their feature back. There's not really a question about it. And I'll just reiterate this as well. If there's one person in your league who's not hearing what I'm saying and is like, I think Moss, he's doing too good, or they're buying into that, what is he, 6th in points per game or something, and they're buying it, now's your chance. I mean, now is your chance to make a move.
If he has one more big game, by the way, then it's really your chance. And it just becomes hilarious because it's like the Colts would have just paid someone $42 million and watch the other guy just go off. Zach Moss is making like $600K this year or something.
They just kind of prove the point of why you don't need necessarily to pay the running backs, and then they did anyway. It's a really bizarre situation there in Indy, but we'll see. I'm happy for JT though. I'll say that.
Of course.
There's like two different conversations.
Yeah,
Happy
we
for
love
him for
seeing
sure.
players,
Deserves it. But in terms of managing your team, your football team, it was definitely an interesting decision.
All right, back here on Fantasy Focus now. Field Yates, Mike Clay, and Daniel Dopp making our way through our Week 6 preview. Part 2, guys. We talked about Gabe Davis a little bit earlier in the week.
We did.
4 straight touchdowns in 4 consecutive games. Mike Clay taking on the New York Giants this week. How do you feel about Gabe Davis in
Not
Week
great.
6?
This should have been our board bet.
Wow,
This should have been.
Do you
our
guys
board
want to usurp the other board bet with this board bet?
I don't know. All the board bets. Just do a show of board bets.
Did you and I do a board bet earlier this week on Gabe Davis?
No, I think you guys were almost in fisticuffs over
about it?
Gabe
Is that what it
Davis.
was?
So
we might have to do another one. But look, my case is, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier this week. 5.2 targets per game this year is actually down from 6.2 last year, and he was 36th on a points per game basis. I know he's 4th in touchdowns, has 4 in 4 straight games, but he's 48th at wide receiver in targets. He's only 19th in expected touchdowns, which is good. 2.3 though, which suggests like going forward, he's going to have half as many touchdowns on the same amount of targets. So Giants, a lot of touchdowns so far, but again, I think they're going to be better on the perimeter now with Adoree Jackson and Banks emerging the rookie. So don't love the matchup. It's fine. It's nothing I'm moving the needle for, but I definitely think Davis is above his head right now. And honestly, the way you were all over me for Christian Watson love all offseason for the same thing.
It is the same
to be
thing.
in on Gabe Davis when he is so low volume, but it's all touchdown basis.
Big difference to me.
Big difference.
Ooh, okay, tell me the difference, and then I think I could think of another big board bet out of this one. I'm just board bet machine over here right
All
now.
right. I like it. Board bet show.
The big difference to me between these two things is one of them, this is no offense to Packers fans, one of them has Jordan Love under center. The other one has Josh Allen. What do you mean?
But it's the same concept, though. It's still low
Yeah,
volume,
they're both quarterbacks.
high.
Yeah, they both throw the football to the other guy. It's the same concept.
It's still low volume, high touchdown, right?
Both first-round
Unsustainable
picks.
touchdown, right?
I think Jordan Love might have like nearly the same number of passing touchdowns as Josh Allen so far this year.
Honestly,
I'm trying to get you guys madder at each other.
This is one of those situations, in all seriousness, everything you're saying, I totally understand. there is an emotional side to me as a fantasy manager. How do you take a guy on one of the best offenses in football who has scored a touchdown in 4 straight games going up against another bad defense and say, I'm not going to play him there this week?
I would say there is a 94.2% chance that Kevin Pulsifer, who writes the questions for Red Zone, I think, whoever does it.
I think
Addison's doing it this
Okay,
year. Yeah.
Addison Walton, if you're listening right now, I will bet you that one of those questions this week will be, will Gabe Davis
touchdown?
score a
I hope
touchdown?
Oh, yeah.
If you say no,
I'm absolutely going to say
You
no.
got a
Are you
hedge,
kidding
right?
me? Yes, of course. That's exactly what I'm doing.
In that game, by the way, no Daniel Jones for the Giants. That was officially announced just moments ago.
Oh,
so
okay.
a 14.5 point spread could become like 15.5 by the time the show is up and live and listenable.
Field, how would that change if there's no Daniel Jones? Would that change at all the way you look at Darren Waller? Or regardless of who's under center, you're still going to be playing him if he plays this week?
Yeah, there are just no tight ends to replace him with. And by the way, we didn't talk about this with Stephania, and I'm not trying to get us off track, but it's an important update here. There are like 5 tight ends you trust. One of them might not be available this week, as Sam Laporta suffered a calf strain in practice yesterday, or before practice yesterday with the Lions, missed practice, not at the walkthrough today. So it sounds like there's a real chance that this unbelievable rookie won't be available in week 6.
yeah, that would be too bad.
If you have a warm body at tight end, play him.
Yeah, and we might get 12 to 14 Amon-Ra targets in this game if he's out. So,
Or we might
if
see
he plays,
David
and
Montgomery
Laporta's
run
out.
the ball 30 times
Yeah.
because he's not the only guy that's going to be
You
out.
texted me last night because I made some projection updates, including pulling Daniel Jones. So if the projection's already updated for Gerard Taylor, but I pulled Jahmyr Gibbs as well, and Montgomery just shoots right up near the top. And it
second
makes sense.
highest projected running back on the week now.
Look, he's been top 5 on a points per game basis this season, and his target share was like 15% last week. That's like where Gibbs has been. So he's going to be a featured back in this game. Montgomery, he's already a lineup block, but now especially a lineup block. When do they play? They're on the
425.
425. So they're in the main.
We got flex to the 4
They're in the main
o'clock.
DFS slate.
Oh, that's
too.
right. That's right. Bucks, Lions, fun game.
Yeah, that's right. Flexing Lions early, guys. How cool is it to be a Lions fan? Have
That's
your
when
game
you know
flexed
you've made
into
it
prime
back.
time. Exactly. I love that. All right, let's talk about one of your guys, Mike Clay, Devonta Smith.
Yeah.
This is an important one, I think.
This has been really
As I
tough.
wear my AJ Brown shirt.
That's
today.
Wow.
so wow. Okay.
Message
What are you trying
sent.
to tell us? Yeah.
Message sent to Devonta.
Yeah.
Get it going.
I tried this yesterday on the show with Patrick Mahomes to motivate him. Didn't quite work. So just
I thought the
tread
Denver
lightly.
defense would motivate him, but man,
No.
nope.
So here's the thing.
Anyway.
We're obviously starting A.J. Brown because you feel great about it, but Devonta Smith has not been a guy that you feel super confident in starting.
Yeah, 6 yards on 6 targets last week. Actually, it was very much a dud. Just 1 catch, 2 duds in his last 3 games. But I said this earlier in the week. Did have at least 14.8 points in 3 of 5 games so far this season. So he's had some decent games. It's not like it's just been completely duds across the board. His targets are down a little bit. His air yard share is the same as last season. But I think the biggest concern in terms of projecting a bounce back this week is the matchup. He's a perimeter receiver, as is A.J. Brown. We expect DJ Reed most likely back. He missed last week in the concussion protocol. You have him and Sauce Gardner. They're the perimeter corners, and they're the best in the business. So this is a very tough matchup.
And Devonta Smith doesn't usually go in the middle. That's not
very much. It's Quez Watkins is primarily in the slot, so he'll get a little run inside, but he's going to see those two a lot. It's a good Jets defense. Could be perhaps a low-scoring game. Obviously, the Jets have some really good edge rushers as well, which could put pressure on Jalen Hurts, and the red zone offense has been horrific so far for Philadelphia. So definitely some concerns. I think better days ahead for Smith. Maybe a guy you want to go out and trade for after this week, but definitely some concerns here in this matchup.
Is there a chance that we just get 2 squeaky wheels? Like, I'm fine with the noise if we get 1 squeaky wheel and A.J. Brown.
Devonta Smith doesn't talk.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you
You're right.
hear my impression of him yesterday on the show?
Yeah, I was here.
Oh, you were here for
Was that yesterday? I don't
Or
know.
Wednesday, whatever it was.
I've been tuning in because Liz is on the show. So
Right.
this week
Oh,
I'm
that makes
watching.
sense. That makes sense.
So I didn't know if I was here or that was when I was away. But yeah, I tuned in.
Like he quietly, like he went to like Nick Sirianni's office and left a Post-it note and was like, please throw me
sir."
the football more, sir. Thank you.
I loved watching Nick Sirianni at the end of that game. I thought this was just really cool as a coach, where he was like, hey guys, you want to know the great thing about being 5-0? It's not about the fact we could go undefeated at the end of the season. It's the fact that we can be 6-0 next week. And I just love the way you compartmentalize that into like, let's not look too far. Let's be excited about what we're doing. I just really like the way that Nick Sirianni obviously.
Total stud. Our director today is Brian, is from Philly, and I bet this will land for him. Nick Sirianni and Bryce Harper get Philadelphia, and that's not like there are some people that go there and they aren't prepared for it. Sirianni, Bryce Harper, get it, embrace it, perfect for that city.
Heck yeah. By the way, did you see the pseudo tush push that the Chiefs tried last night on the fake?
That was terrible. Why'd they do that on 4th and
That's
long
honestly,
too?
that's like a low key part of some of Mahomes' his down year is that like they just futz around too much.
Yeah.
On like short yardage plays, like if you're gonna run the tush push, do not have your 125-pound punter Tommy Townsend is one of the tush pushers.
Yeah.
I would say like 4th and inches or something, or a short one, fine. But that was a long two. Like that was not the right
Also,
time to do
how
that.
about the NFL being like, boy, we might need to outlaw this because it's too easy, and then we find out, oh, it's only easy for teams that know how to do it.
Now they're
really
like,
well.
two Giants got hurt, so now they're like, it could be an injury issue, which is it feels like
football.
Honestly, it feels like I'm all for player health if it really is a health concern, fine, but kind of feels like a cop out. Like everyone wants to get rid of it. Now they're looking for excuses for it.
I'd be surprised if it is still allowed next year, though.
I agree. I think it'll be outlawed, and it's nonsense.
I'm sorry, you guys are so good at stuff. You just have to cut
Old
it out of the
man yelling
NFL.
at clouds right now. Very old.
So brutal.
All right, guys, let's continue on with this preview. Who can you trust here from the Washington Commanders?
Next subject.
this
Nobody.
week?
Keep moving. Logan Thomas, maybe.
Trivia.
Logan Thomas.
Which defense has surrendered the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing running backs?
Who are they playing this week?
I
The
would have
Falcons.
said
Mike, way to spoil my stat right there,
Seriously.
Mike. Yeah, this is a stingy.
I actually have that
Atlanta
on my
defense.
notes for
Do
the
you?
record. Yeah.
let me see
I'm
it.
sure you do.
Let me see it.
Okay, he does. Mike is so prepared.
Fewest
But
fantasy points to running backs,
It's
he
not
does.
a
Okay.
good matchup, obviously, this week for Brian Robinson. So what you have going in your favor for Brian Robinson, though, is two things. First of all, this game probably will be pretty low scoring. So he's got a real shot at 20 carries this week.
Yep.
However, if for some reason they find themselves in negative game script, we saw
problem.
last week, he had 4 catches for 48 yards. That kind of salvaged his day. Repeat that stat, Mike. How many called passes did they have to end last game?
55 passes.
That's amazing. 55 straight
55.
passes to
That's
end the game.
unheard of.
That's,
Yes, it started in like 8 minutes left in the second quarter.
That's
They never called
ridiculous.
another run.
Yeah. But so I have Robinson as RB26. That seems to be right in line with where you guys have him. He is the only, I guess, yeah, you're right. Logan Thomas would also be on this radar because he's been very, very solid in his return from injury.
And
But other
just
than that,
tight
like,
end.
how do you play the wide receivers right now in Washington?
Yeah, DFS. That's how you play them, maybe.
Yeah, you
maybe.
can't. I mean, McLaurin, we thought got back on track, but that's just like against the Eagles sort of thing now. When he
Right,
plays the
yeah.
Eagles, he's been really good. 86 yards and 11 targets in that Week 4 game. But then last year, right back to 49 yards on 5 targets. It was a great matchup against the Bears, so it was a letdown for sure. He's now seen, this is unreal and unacceptable. 6... Well, I'm just like, I feel like I'm just tearing
Unreal
apart
and
coaches today.
unacceptable. It's both of them. That was the
I'm just
the
like,
duo.
I'm coming for like coaches, which are like they care what I think. But anyway, it's infuriating. 6 or fewer targets in 8 of his last 9 games. He's averaging under 13 fantasy points per game during that stretch. That's like a half a season.
Yeah.
That's way too long of a stretch to not be using Terry McLaurin. Also, 5th fewest fantasy points to receivers for Atlanta as well. And AJ Terrell probably going to shadow him in this one. A lot to not like.
You like that Falcons defense as a streamer this week?
Oof.
Yeah.
Commanders
absolutely.
have allowed the most sacks in the NFL by a lot,
Yeah.
obviously. And Mike just talked about how stingy they have been both to opposing wide receivers and opposing running backs. So reasonable streaming option for sure is that Falcons defense. But yeah, I mean, I actually taped a video before the show today about Terry McLaurin. And like my analysis on Terry McLaurin is like, I don't know what to tell you. Like he's awesome at football, right? Like this is not a Terry McLaurin problem.
Yeah.
It's that I don't control calling the plays or deciding who to throw the football to once the ball is snapped. And as Mike said, this is not like a new thing specific to 2023. There's a pretty large sample size of the Commanders not getting the football enough to the best player on their offense by a long shot.
Yeah, and last week we saw, I mean, granted, part of it was because they ran 55 straight pass plays, but Jamison Crowder, had involvement, and they're using Diami Brown. They're rotating another receivers here. I heard Santana Moss is playing this week. Like they're
Stop
just
it.
maybe
Really?
Sonoris Moss as well. They're going to bring them both back. Both
Starter
Mosses.
in 12 teams?
Yeah, absolutely. You might as well. I mean,
Okay.
start him over Terry McLaurin already.
Yeah, Jahan Dotson too,
but
right?
I think one positive here, as you mentioned him, Logan Thomas, right? He's actually been pretty good. He just has a connection with Sam Howell, who likes throwing to the tight end, apparently. 11 targets last week, 77 yards and a touchdown, 8+ targets in 2 of his 4 games, a touchdown in 2 of his last 3 games, and this is one of Atlanta's weak spots so far. Second most fantasy points to tight end so far for the Falcons. So maybe there's something there. We're talking about Laporta replacements or the problems at that fringe tight end 1 range. Actually, last night when I was prepping, I actually moved Thomas up a little bit in my ranks. I felt like it was a little too low.
Yeah, he was Dan, just to be clear, he was too busy prepping to get Russ out of his lineup.
Yeah, so
And
that's
because
what
I'm
it is.
dedicated to the people, not to my own teams. I don't care about
yeah.
that. I'm here for the
Yes.
people, unlike you guys, just in there
Yeah.
tinkering with your lineups all day
Right,
long.
right,
Some
right.
of us
That makes
prep for
sense.
the show. That's why I knew Atlanta allowed the fewest
fewest
fantasy points to running back.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
right.
let's keep moving ahead. Mike, can you tell me why last week Jakobi Meyers saw so many targets in comparison to Devonta Adams? Should we be starting Jakobi Meyers over Devonta this week?
I'm not going to go that far,
Okay.
but you're starting Jakobi Myers because
Been awesome.
He's played 3 full games with Jimmy Garoppolo so far this season. 9 catches, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
7 catches, 85 yards, no touchdowns.
Yep.
And then 7 for 75 and a touchdown. At least 10 targets in all 3 games.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like that sort of production usage is that's top 10. Like if he keeps doing this all season, he's gonna be a top 10 scorer. And to answer your question, the Raiders will then have 2 top 10 fantasy receivers because Devonta Adams is going to get his. What, do you have a 20 target game?
I think that this is a situation where I realize I have Jakobi Meyers ranked lower than Devonta Adams, but I don't know how Devonta Adams doesn't let Jakobi Meyers go off in this revenge game. I might take Jakobi.
Wow.
This
We're gonna board bet that one,
There's a
Mike.
board bet.
You want to do a board bet?
All the board bets.
Yeah, might as well. I mean, some separation
Come on,
potentially
what are
from one of the
revenge
two of
games
you.
for? Like this, isn't
That could
what this
also
is
be
all
a
about?
great question. I mean, it is a revenge game, and I'm sure Jakobi Meyers is not thrilled with the fact that the Patriots. It's not as simple as they chose Juju Smith-Schuster, but the contracts are have
Almost
enough
identical.
similarities that people have made that presumption. And Jakobi Meyers himself jumped on Twitter. I think that the last tweet Jakobi Meyers has had was when he made something that, like, he made a comment like ice cold business or something when the Patriots signed Juju this offseason. And obviously one of those signings has worked out really well.
Yes.
One of them has not, as has been the case with many things for the Patriots on offense so far this year. So yeah, I think he does. I mean, I don't think he needs any more motivation. He, as Mike just said, like 3 games with Jimmy G, he's been a top 10-ish wide receiver. So he's been great. And the Patriots defense obviously has been hampered by injuries so dramatically. I mean, not having Christian Gonzalez is like taking away one of the, I don't know. He only played 3.5 games.
But he
I don't know.
looks good.
But he looked like he could be one of those, 5 or 7 cornerbacks in the NFL where you're like, when you play against him, you expect decreased production for your number 1 wide receiver.
Guys don't step in like that, even as first round. Actually, first round corners usually struggle for a while. He was shadowing ones immediately.
I know. They were like, Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, go for it.
I'm super excited for him next year to get back. He looks like a budding star.
Can I ask you guys a question then? Everything that you're talking about just makes me think as a fan. Everything you just said is like Sauce Gardner in my head. I'm not trying to compare him to Sauce Gardner, but are you saying that there's like shadows of some of that?
100%. And
it could be.
And New England, we don't know what's going to happen in the future with coaching
much
and all that
uncertainty
stuff.
there,
but next year, we have this history of Malcolm Butler and Logan Ryan and J.C. Jackson, these shadow corners. That they, New England identifies these ones. They put them up against. I know people think they put them up on 2s a lot. They do that rarely. It's usually against the ones. Gonzalez could be the next guy. He's going to be a superstar if that happens. So
Heck yeah. All right, guys, let's move ahead and finish out what is left here on Fantasy Focus Football. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
By the way, should we mention the Gardner Minshew revenge game against
Oh,
Jacksonville?
you're right. It
You're on
is
the
a
Lawrence
revenge
side.
game. Yep.
That's going to be a fun one for you.
That's
Official, by the way.
Oh.
No Deshaun Watson this week.
Yep. Okay. So PJ Walker, right?
PJ Walker, not
PJ
Dwayne
Walker will start.
Robinson. Yep.
I said this yesterday. If PJ Walker starts, I want no part of a Browns pass catcher.
Agreed.
Probably. I mean, it'd be tough. Still feel like it's tough to bench Cooper. You're going to bench him?
It's
or?
not.
Mike,
this is how it
I
works.
guess 10-teamer's fine.
Yeah.
You just drag them to your bench and you hit
that's right.
bench, and it's really simple.
Who are you putting in there?
Gabe Davis, probably.
No, I'm sorry, Cooper.
No.
Another board back. Keep them
So
coming.
let's keep on going with all this Gabe Davis board bets.
David Njoku, I don't know his official status yet, but dude, I'm thinking about David Njoku right now, man. He revealed the extent of his burns on Instagram. That is harrowing what he went through. What was that, 2 or 2.5 weeks ago? And I am just so grateful that he is like still alive and not dealing with stuff that's more significant going forward. That was a very, very scary scene. He, at last check, was uncertain to play this weekend because of those burns. But man, that was scary stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Before we get back to our ESPN2 setup, I want to quickly say this because we talked about maybe saying some earlier in the week. I'm going to say this now. I think we all have had, and it's going to slow the podcast down. We'll come back and we'll end on a more positive note.
Yeah.
But I think we've all had some really fun experiences here at ESPN with somebody who is going to be stepping away from their time here at ESPN, and that is Barry Melrose.
Oh, the legend.
I had some awesome times being able to do some hockey podcasts way back when I started, and he has some family members that were in the military. So him and I had a big conversation, and we've talked a bunch of times back and forth about the Air Force and just hockey in general. Like, it was just, Mike, I know I'm not the only one that had these kind of conversations. He was such a sweet, genuine, amazing
Still
human.
is, yeah.
Loved being able to have him here at ESPN. I'm going to miss being able to have a chance to work with him and run into him here in the hallways.
Yeah, I know him super well, but I used to do like the evening sports center, so I'd come in the green room. It was like empty around here, right? There was mothballs floating around the hallways. It was just dead, and he'd just be in the green room because, evenings in the winter, there's hockey going on, and he would constantly be on sports centers and calling games, whatever he was doing. And you'd just be sitting there. So I'd be waiting to do my show and chat with him a little bit, talk a little hockey.
He is exactly who he is on screen as he is off screen.
Great.
That personality and everything. Oh, it's amazing.
Super nice guy.
Right around the playoffs, at the start of the playoffs, Barry would just come to ESPN for like 3 months. He would relocate to Bristol and move in the hotel for like literally 3 months straight. He might have gone home like one day during that 3 month stretch. And then he would just come here, he'd show up, I don't know, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, maybe get ready for whatever games were on and just stay there until 1:30 or 2 when the games were done. Wash, rinse, repeat. Simple man, great man. Wish him the very best in the fight he has ahead of himself. But just an unbelievable ESPN career. And just electric. Best hair in sports by far.
Yes.
There is no number 2.
Ooh, I don't know. Him and Mel Kiper, I think, go back and forth for
Different
that
types.
title.
Different types of hair for sure. But Barry's mullet. Made that mullet cool.
Love you, buddy. All right, back here on Fantasy Focus, and we're going to close out our Week 6 preview, guys, talking about a couple of start-sit questions here. Let's talk about the Ravens running backs.
Sit.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Mike, I love it. You're
This one's tough.
like that young kid in class
some
who's like
nuance?
too exuberant. No. So here's part of the reason why I think it's fair to sit all these running backs is that not only are Justice Hill and Gus Edwards going to play, but it sounds like Keaton Mitchell's going to play as well.
I want to see him
for the Ravens, and he has been I wouldn't say much hyped, but the semi-hyped back in that Ravens backfield. Adam Schefter.
It's a low bar, but yes.
Adam Schefter grabbed him off waivers like a month ago.
Okay,
great.
hold on here.
Okay.
Wait, do we have like 30 seconds here for this?
Take as much time you want.
Okay, so
yeah.
I want to know, like, if I we got to play this out, right? So in our dynasty league, I picked him up.
Yeah.
And then this was like a month ago.
Okay.
And then a week, this is before there was anything out there. There was nothing. I was in, and then I dropped him like as I needed to add someone for like week 3 or whatever it was, week 2.
Okay.
And then you texted me immediately.
Yeah.
I think you were just like making fun of me because it was such like a ridiculous move, like to drop some random running back.
Someone you've never heard
And
of.
then like the next week I added him back, and then like the Schefter thing, it was on like, he's on FF Now talking about him. He added him. So I'm like, who got there first? I had the same conversation with Scott Clark.
Really?
So I'm like, did I beat?
Are you
did
the
I
new
beat-
Adam Schefter?
Am I the new Adam Schefter? Did I beat him to the punch on this? Like, who gets credit?
So
for Keaton
Shefty's
Mitchell?
on the hot seat is what you're telling us. Shefty is officially on the hot
that's
seat.
it.
Okay. Any other breaking news you want to share with on the podcast right now?
Let's see here. So no, I don't know. Nothing.
You had eggs
I
and
totally
he had
spaced. I
eggs
was
and
like-
oatmeal for breakfast this morning. There's your breaking
That's right.
news.
Is this going to be Shefty's long shot on Sunday?
I don't know.
Probably.
Don't know. I
That's
won
a
my
good
first
bet.
long
That's like
shot of the season.
Congratulations,
Thank you very much.
Field. This has
You did?
shades of
You won?
Kyron Williams to me is kind of what it feels like.
But that's the thing
Well, yeah.
is that when Shefty adds somebody in fantasy, he'll be the first to tell you that sometimes the more you know, the less you know, right? However, when he is adding somebody that is basically off the radar entirely, usually it's
raise
because
an
someone
eyebrow,
is saying to him, hey, this is a player that we think something of. You might want to go add him on your fantasy roster. Some of those have hit over the years. Some of those have whiffed over the years, and Adam will be the first person to tell you that. However, in fantasy, there are moves that you make when you think you know a guy is good, and they end up not working out. Meanwhile, there are times during the draft where you just take a random shot on some player, and you're like, whatever. Probably not that good, but...
Puka Nacua?
Right,
I'll throw a dart at that guy.
So, it's part of the game here. So, I would say that Keaton Mitchell, if you have a flexible bench spot, not a terrible speculative ad, but I am not here to tell you that Keaton Mitchell will be on your roster a month from now as well.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
I also was going to say, just to make sure that we did put a bow on this Ravens running back conversation, against the Titans this week, we really do want to sit all of these running backs if we can, in spite of adding Keaton Mitchell.
Yeah, I guess so, though. They allowed the big game to Zach Moss last week, and Jerome Ford 2 weeks ago had 19 points against him, so maybe trending the other direction. I know Ford's was touchdown heavy, but still Moss ran all over him. So I'm not so sure if that's the extreme concern it was last year and earlier this year, but the problem is it's a committee with at least 2 guys. None of them have been good in fantasy so far. Edwards has 1 game with 7+ fantasy points, and Hill has had the 2 touchdowns in week 1. Otherwise, hasn't been very productive. So I don't want them regardless of matchup right now, and especially if they add in Keaton Mitchell. By the way, he's like I think he's like $190, right? Some concerns that he might not be a feature back. It's a different conversation if he's like 215, 220 could be a feature back, but we're looking for somebody in a good Ravens offense to emerge as their one, like a Jaleel McLaughlin, for example. He could be flashy in that kind of way.
Before you ask the next question, Daniel, let me ask both of you. Do you believe in UFOs, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, you guys, you both do. All right. Well, then the answer to the next question will be sit. The question is what, Daniel?
Are you going to start Josh Dobbs this week against the Rams?
Right, because Josh does not believe in UFOs.
Are you kidding me?
Josh, I believe, is an aeronautical engineer, like a literal
I just changed my
rocket
mind.
scientist.
No,
right?
he's like so smart.
Yes.
Trust him.
So he mentioned this a couple days ago during his press conference. He does not believe in UFOs. So take that for what it's worth, and let that inform your decision of whether you should start Josh Dobbs. That's typically how our analysis goes, correct?
Gosh.
Absolutely. That's analytics in a nutshell right there.
There we go.
So Dud
You want
last
to give
week.
the actual? Yeah,
Dud last week, but he did have 40+ rushing yards in 3 straight before that. I will say this, Rams, 50+ rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown exactly to Anthony Richardson and Jalen Hurts, running quarterback. So they've been exposed there. Maybe Dobbs, he has that in his arsenal. Maybe he brings a little with his legs in this one. But I have him 14th, so he's kind of except for the deepest of leagues, I'm probably not going to start him this
We
week.
won't have James Conner on this team. We were going to have either Keontae Ingram or Amari DeMarcado.
Both of them.
How
Probably
that
Tony
impact
Jones, too.
do you think this offense with Josh Dobbs, or do you think it's not really going to do a whole lot from the running back position?
for Dobbs.
James Conner is such a great pass catcher. That's the only thing. I don't know if we're going to see a difference there, but
He's a good player. It's just a running back position. It just doesn't move the needle that
very
much.
tough.
Yeah, Dobbs. I think Dobbs will bounce back. 15. I think that last
a
week
little better,
was that was that was a bad day at the office, but still a good athlete, can add 20, 30 rushing yards, and they've got enough weapons in the passing game that he has been doing a good job of distributing the football to. That I think a top 15 finish is in play.
Field, we got 60 seconds. Tell us what you think about Matthew Stafford.
How many teams have allowed more top 10 finishes to opposing quarterbacks this season? The Arizona Cardinals.
You didn't give me a chance that time to spoil that one.
Then the Arizona Cardinals.
How many? 4.
0.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals have been the gift that keeps on giving to opposing quarterbacks. They were for Joe Burrow last week. Stafford has been throwing the ball a lot this season, and maybe it's a 1-game sample size that I should be ignoring, but in the first game with Cooper Kupp back, they threw the football at a higher rate than they had in the 4 games without Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, both top 12 options at the wide receiver spot. I've got Matthew Stafford as quarterback 9, my favorite streamer of the week.
Yep, I'm at 10. 11 passing touchdowns in his last 12 games remains a little bit of a concern for me, but a step in the right direction last week. And again, the matchup, Arizona, 14+ fantasy points to the opposing quarterback in every game this season. So, yeah, he's a streamer.
So you can play him this week.
Yeah, he's a streamer.
Feel good about it.
Officially confirmed.
Starts the
you can play
answer.
him. Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for our Week 6 preview, guys. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out the Squirrel Report on the ESPN NFL YouTube page. It just published right now that you are done with Fantasy Focus.
YouTube.com/ESPN NFL.
That's right. Go
That's
check
what's
it out
going to make
there.
us a comedy podcast.
Absolutely.
That's actually a comedy and fantasy show.
Liz Loza joined us on that for a little fantasy therapy. We love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Make sure that you check in on Fantasy Football Now on Sunday mornings. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. Good luck here in Week 6. We'll see you Sunday morning for Fantasy Football Now.
So I've always done the fantasy therapy things, and I'm usually on the show on Monday.
Wow,
Liz replaced me on
interesting.
all those things. Is there a hidden
You
message
got a
here?
lot of extra vacation coming up, Mike.
Yeah, your schedule is pretty clear for the future weeks.
Awkward.
Hey, have you ever done any acting on the hit TV show 24?
No.
Oh, okay.
I watched it. I watched it. That count?
that
I
might
watched
count.
all
Actually.
of the episodes multiple